Well, one of the reasons we're doing an SAT double passage is that that's the kind of reading you want to do well on SA2. Now, here we have Lincoln and Thoreau basically speaking on whether laws should be obeyed even when they're unjust. And the quiz asks you to obviously read both passages, do a pretty good job of understanding the first one and the second one. And then these last questions are based on both passages. That means you have to carry both of them in your head and think between one and the other. And so when we get to McKay, you're going to want to get, or not to McKay, pardon me, with SA2, I'm looking at McKay right now. When we get to SA2, you're going to want contrasting presentations of Gaetan Dugas. And that is, what kind of a person was he? You know, from Schiltz, that he's very self-centered and in love with himself and narcissistic. But then you know from the movie Killing Patient Zero, and you will soon know from McKay's writing, that he was quite a different person to his friends, very considerate, really quite thoughtful, quite humane. So that's one category. But you're going to want those passages from Schiltz on one side and those passages from the movie or McKay on the other, and you're going to want to look at both of them before you write that 2-paragraph stretch. Or you might want to look at his role in the assignment asks you to look at his role in the epidemic. For Schiltz, you know, patient zero, the guy who either started the epidemic or brought it from coast to coast. And subsequent writers, of course, you know, show very emphatically that's absolute baloney. And so you're going to want to have Schiltz, how he presents him as the originator of the AIDS epidemic, or at least dang close to it, and the other writers who show that, no, he was one of, you know, thousands of people who were infected with HIV and did not know it. That's why I have that quote from Jim Coran, KPZ 6, about 15 seconds in, if I'm correct. And he basically says that by the time the Gottlieb study was published on June 5th, 1981, 250,000 Americans were already infected. So you're just really not going to have one person start an infection that reaches the 250,000 people. Anyway, so there's one. And then the other thing, the last one is what kind of did he intentionally spread the virus? Now, this is fascinating and probably obviously have Schiltz in many passages right around the mid-100s and into 200 and a little bit after, where that's where he starts presenting Gaetan Dugas as somebody who is knowing infecting other people. And after Selma Dritz tells him, hey, stop it, you're harming people, he says, basically, screw off. And so that's Gaetan Dugas, the sociopath, or Jack the Ripper, as Schiltz calls him. But then, when you start looking into, especially in McKay, some of the passages I suggest in that short voice thread, you're going to find that, it's profoundly, it's just absolutely entirely false. And there's no way in the world that Gaetan Dugas was certain he was infecting other people with a virus. He had no idea. Nobody else did. And that's why you have all of those articles about 1982-ish or so showing the great uncertainty. And also McKay gives a pretty good example of that as well. I mentioned even early on in the first couple of pages, here he is. Dugas is looking forward to recovering from his cancer, getting his hair growing back, taking lots of vitamin A, and getting healthy. That's not somebody who's spreading a deadly virus. So again, and there's a lot of good information in McKay. So what you're going to get is you're going to have that SAT double passage sense, and that you're going to want the readings in front of you that represent the two views of Gaetan Dugas, whether it's the kind of person he is, his role in the epidemic and whether or not he intentionally infected other people. And then when you write the paragraphs, there are only going to be 3 sets of 2. You've got those 3 themes. Basically, the way you do these, and this is an academic exercise to teach you how to shape this type of an essay, is you have both A and B, Schiltz and McKay. And then in the first one, you develop Schiltz. And then in the second one, you reintroduce the topic and then show McKay's take on the same topic, basically the contrasting point of view. So it's really cool to do that. And what I use is McKay from the article, and that is Schiltz is basically saying when he saw Paul Popham dying of cancer in 1986, that in an instant he realized Paul, who had lesions on his face, was dying from a virus this guy Dugas gave him. It was the legacy. So the idea is Jack now, Paul's lover, was infected by Gaten Dugas, and then Paul was subsequently infected, and now he's dying. And it's just crazy. He can't let go of Dugas. And from McKay, and I'm sorry I did not cite this page, and it's from another reading, but basically the patients, the people in the cluster diagram, as we've said many times, were infected years earlier, in the early to mid-70s, beyond the 1979 to 1981 investigation. Or quite simply put, these people were carrying HIV years before they met each other, the people in the cluster diagram. So anyway, and I'll attach this too, but I just want to keep in mind that the double reading is really where you want to be before you write. You want those passages from Schiltz. You want those contrasting passages, whether they're from the movie or the McKay reading or the one PBS article that I've added for your reading this week. You want to have all that stuff in front of you, read it back and forth, get those best lines that show the contrast between one and the other, and then roll that into a thoughtful paragraph. So again, this is like 80% of your work is done before you write a word. You have to get those sources in front of you. You have to keep your 3 topics in mind. What kind of a person was he, according to Schiltz, according to others? What was his role in the epidemic? Patient 0, according to Schiltz, or one of hundreds of thousands infected and not knowing it? And finally, did he knowingly pass the virus, according to Schiltz? And comparing that to the general confusion of 82, 83, and also Gaten Dugas' confusion. So anyway, I think this is, I just want to connect the SAT double passage to the work you will be doing. I hope this helps you put it in place.